Next, I'll read two prose pieces. They're about my mother's family, from part of the longer prose piece that Michael mentioned. My mother's family, all of whom by and large were criminals. Ninth in race. Prostitution, gambling, fencing, contract murder, loan sharking, political corruption, and crime of every sort were the daily trade in Philadelphia's Tenderloin, the oldest part of town. The Kevich family ruled the stew for half a century, from Prohibition to the rise of Atlantic City. My mother was a Kevich. Not all Jewish boys become doctors, lawyers, violinists, and nobelists. Some sons of immigrants from the Pale became criminals, often as part of or in cahoots with Italian crime families. A recent history calls them tough Jews, men like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, who organized and ran Murder Incorporated for Lucky Luciano in the 20s and 30s, and Arnold Rothstein, better known as Gatsby's Meyer Wolfsheim, who fixed the 1919 Baseball World Series. The Kevich family were tough Jews. My mother's brother Albert was a taciturn man. He lived with his wife Babe, née Dorazio, and their 4 girls in a terrace home at 24th and Snyder in South Philadelphia's Italian neighborhood. He had no son. Babe was a great beauty, hence the nickname, which she still bears proudly at 92, and her daughters were beautiful as well. From the street, their house looked like any other working-class row home in the neighborhood, but inside it brimmed with toys, television, clothes, and delicacies. The daughters were pampered and much envied. Education for Uncle Al, Aunt Babe, and their daughters stopped with South Philly High. They attended neither church nor synagogue. There were no books on their tables, nor art on their walls, excepting a mural of a bucolic Chinese landscape painted on their living room wall. Uncle Al was a detective on the Vice Squad, the Philadelphia Police Department's special unit charged with reducing prostitution, gambling, loan sharking, fencing, protection, and other rackets. The opportunities for corruption were many. Some said the Vice Squad's function was to protect Vice. Clarence Ferguson was the head of the Vice Squad. Babe's sister was Ferguson's wife. We went to visit Uncle Al's house one Sunday when I was 10. A week before, Billy Meade, the boss of the Republican machine in Philadelphia, had been shot and nearly killed in the family club. He was drinking in the early hours at his accustomed spot at the bar when someone shot him with a silenced pistol, shoved through the inspection grill in the door when it was slid aside in answer to a knock. The shooter apparently was short because he stood on a milk crate to fire through the grill. Must have known Meade could be found in the club in the wee hours of Sunday morning and where along the bar he customarily stood. Billy Meade and Big Milt, Uncle Al's father, were on the outs at the time, and Meade had done something that caused Big Milt real trouble. Uncle Al was just 5'5", had ample experience with and access to firearms, and would have known Meade frequented the club. I watched the police take Uncle Al from his house that morning and confiscate a large chest containing his sword and gun collection. He was tried, but not convicted, because the murder weapon was never found. And Babe said she had been making love to him in their marriage bed when the shooting occurred. No one else was accused of the attempted murder, and when Meade recovered, he made peace with Big Milt. They both died of natural causes. Some years later, Uncle Al was again involved in a shooting, and this time there was no question that he was the shooter. He had stopped for a traffic light in a very rough neighborhood on the way home from work when 4 young black men approached his car. According to Al, they intended to carjack him. I never saw Uncle Al without his gun, a .38 police revolver he wore in a holster on his belt. When he drove, he always unholstered the gun and laid it on the seat beside him. One of the men tried to open the driver's door, and Uncle Al grabbed his gun from the seat and shot through the window, seriously wounding him. The other 3 fled, and Al chased them, firing as he went. He brought down a second, and the other 2 were picked up by the police a short time later. The papers were full of pictures of the car's shattered windows, the 2 black casualties, and the white off-duty detective who had shot them. The police department commended him for bravery. I never saw Uncle Al rage. Crossed, he would stare at you coolly, with diamond blue eyes, and sooner or later, inevitably, even the score or more. Uncle Al was a wonderful fellow.